You're listening to ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio with Matthew C. Anderson and Joel Lindstrom. Thanks to Kingsway Soft. Kingsway Soft's the leading integration solution provider. It offers solutions that make data integrations affordable and painlessly easy. Kingsway Soft is a leading provider of Microsoft Dynamics integration software, including Dynamics 365, CRM, AX, Nav, GP, SL, as well as many other applications, such as Marketo, Dropbox, QuickBooks, and Salesforce. Whether you need one solution or several, Kingsway Soft works easily within the SSIS platform to make your integration process as quick and easy as possible. And we're also sponsored by Alexa CRM. WordPress powers more than 25% of all the websites on the internet and is the number one choice for blogs, websites, and portals. Dynamics 365 is the de facto standard for sales, marketing, and customer service, and industry solutions. Now they can work together with the Dynamics 365 CRM WordPress plugin built with love by the Alexa CRM team. Capture forms, engage your users and customers, all without writing any code. Control your site in WordPress while keeping your data in Dynamics 365. Thanks to Alexa CRM and Kingsway Soft for sponsoring ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast.
We don't often talk with each other about our families, family life, that kind of thing, and it's certainly not a family podcast.
And we never exchange recipes either.
I know. I do like to cook, but that's another topic for another day, maybe when Blue Apron starts to sponsor the podcast. But so I have a year-and-a-half-old daughter, and I found myself kind of asking myself this question around my productivity ever since she's been born and the ways in which it's changed. And I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks back with the founder of AppSumo, Noah Kagan, who had a quote asking, "Are kids the ultimate productivity hack?" And I really was intrigued by the topic and thought a lot about it. So I'm wondering if we could chat about that one today.
I don't think we're encouraging people to have kids just to increase their productivity.
That would probably be a net negative.
Right. Yeah, let's go for it. I have two children. Mine are a little bit older. My son is 9 and my daughter's 11. So a different stage of life, but still, having children versus not does change the available time you have.
Yeah, well, and the thing that, as I was thinking about it, is just looking at the different ways where when you actually have that time available, that more limited time, whether you have, I imagine older kids who have activities and you're shuttling them around, or you have to be there for this or that event, or you're at my stage where they just require that much attention all the time so they don't go get into, whatever, go down the stairs the wrong way is really one of the stages that I'm at. But the time in between that has become a lot more important for me to try to focus on what am I actually going to use this for, whether that's trying to relax a little bit or whether that's trying to nail out a bunch of stuff from a list or that kind of thing. I mean, is that kind of the way that you see it? I mean, what does that look like for you?
Having kids, well, I would credit my kids partly for me becoming a Microsoft MVP. And here's why. Because when we adopted our daughter, she, like most babies, and we took her home from the hospital when she was born, and she would get up early in the morning, need to be fed, and I would take the morning feeding at 5:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I've never been able, once I get up in the morning, to go back to bed. So then I would be up and I would write blog posts, or I would study something, or I would, plan out what I was going to do. And through that, I kind of kept that same schedule after the fact. My kids now sleep to a more normal time. Well, they're both still early risers, probably because I'm an early riser. Mm-hmm. And, they want to be like me, I guess, or something. But anyway, so I will still, some of my most productive time is, 5:30 to 6:30 in the morning before the kids wake up. And I'm kind of driven by, I have these things, and it's not always things like I'm trying not to do work, but mm-hmm. that's the best time I've found to build on things that I want to do, things that are important to me that maybe don't fit during 8 to 5 or whenever you work, or just clean up stuff, getting ready for the day, getting psyched up for a meeting I've got, whatever, it just helps me be a lot more prepared. So yeah, I think so. I have to fight the tendency to not be doing that all the time. Yep. And actually focus on the kids. And that's the lesson I've learned is, that, yeah, I can do that, but when they're up, they need attention. I don't want to be staring at a screen the whole time, they're up and they're just watching TV or something.
Yeah, no, I didn't have something as regimented as a, 5:30 feeding to get used to, but my daughter's definitely an early riser like her dad. And I found that, one thing that I would do is, I'd wake up pretty naturally the same time every day, but I would, that point until I heard her starting to make noise, and what that gave me was a little pocket of time in the morning where I knew that I had a limited runway that I was going to be able to work with, but it was this time where I could get some stuff done. So what I focused on was having a list of those kind of short things that I could do where if I got interrupted in the middle of it, she started to wake up or whatever, that was going to be okay. But that way I was able to get some stuff done along the way there. And there was something that Noah in this interview that I was talking about had chatted about using a 3x5 note card to write down kind of the night before what he's going to be working on the next day, which had a just kind of a similar feeling to some of the stuff that I had done in trying to fit that stuff in.
Yeah, I like that. And I think I would go a little bit more general than having kids versus not having kids. And it's the power of a deadline. So if you have a deadline and you need to get something done, even if it's an arbitrary deadline that you set for yourself, the things that have deadlines versus the things that don't, the things that have deadlines get done. And I think I've told you about my hack of unplugging my laptop if I know I want to get something done and do it in a short period of time, especially if you have a laptop that the battery doesn't last all day. You kind of create some urgency. And I think one of the things that I've seen in myself is earlier in my career, you go into consulting, a comment I made earlier, it feels like you've always got a final exam coming up because it's like you get one stage done, the next one's starting, you have one project that's ending, another one that's kicking off, and it could be kind of overwhelming, like, oh, I feel like I always have this deadline. But if you kind of embrace that and say, yeah, I do always have a deadline, and use that in a positive way to motivate yourself, to get things done. And so saying, if you're saying, I want to read this book versus I'm going to read this book by next Friday, I'm going to read it by next Friday is the way that I push myself. So it's kind of a weird psychology. And I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, but for me, I was never one in college that had his stuff done a month before it was due. You're always coming closer to the deadline. And so use that, instead of fighting that urge, use that and set your own deadlines and, can reward yourself in some way if you want to. But, in some ways, just the feeling of satisfaction of completing something and meeting a deadline is something I've been able to use in a positive way in my life to motivate myself to do things.
I really like that. I think that's worth giving a try. The funny, it's funny to hear you say it that way, of the satisfaction of having a deadline. It's kind of the satisfaction of meeting a deadline if you do, or the avoiding of the dissatisfaction if you don't. But
and I think I'll use this week as an example. This week was a kind of a shorter week for me because I had it than I did last week. And when I had the full week, no breaks, no time off. And so it's just, it shows me that, I guess mentally I knew I didn't have as much runway to deal with, then I got the same amount or more done this week that as I did last week.
Moving on from that, I have a question I would like to ask you today, Joel.
Sure.
Do you have anything that is not productive?
Yes, I do have That's Not Productive for us this week, and it involves what I got a comment on Twitter from somebody kind of joking about CRM audio, saying it sounds better in chipmunk mode. And there was a article in the Wall Street Journal within the last 2-3 weeks about, and it claims there's a trend, and I don't know if it's a trend or something they just made up, but a trend of people using apps like Overcast to listen to podcasts, but do it in 4 to 5 times speed of what the normal speed is. And so my question is that productive to do that, to get more in?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends, right? I mean, shoot, sometimes you have to be filtering what you want to listen to at all, and can you actually consume that much content and do it in a way where you're actually going to, I don't know, understand, remember any of that stuff after the fact.
I can get up to 2 times, and I do that with Audible books sometimes. If the guy's got a British accent, I usually can go more than 1.5. But or sometimes just for fun, I play our podcasts at half speed, and we sound like we're drunk.
Perfect. Well, I tell you what, I mean, all joking aside, I mean, I was the guy who just an episode ago was talking about how many back episodes of podcasts I have teed up, ready to go on my phone. And I do listen to most podcasts at some sort of sped up rate. I find that I can't physically even tell the difference at like a 1.2. As I have some of them where there might only be a nugget or two that I actually care about in it. I might listen to it at 1.5, maybe a 1.7. Anything after that, I don't feel like I can process, to a satisfactory level what they're actually talking about.
And I would equate it to like reading books. You'll read different types of books in different ways. If it's a business book or a self-help kind of book that's not classic literature, I'll skim it. I'll read maybe, read the index, see which chapters interest me, read the beginning, read the end. Sometimes I read the end of the book first because they summarize everything there. And then you can decide, is it worth my time? If it's a great novel, or just like with a podcast, what are you listening to it for? Is it to get information, get a little bit of information, or is it more of an entertainment thing? I think if it's like an entertainment thing, and you want to, like I listened to the Judge John Hodgman podcast sometimes.
Yes,
and that's a fun one, and you don't want to like listen to them on chipmunk speed.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's a question. When you listen to it sped up, is it actually pitching up at that chipmunk speed so the voices are high pitched, or does
No, it keeps the pitch the same. It's not really raising it like the chipmunks. But
Thank goodness.
It's just faster. And what I found is it takes, and again, I'm a chicken. I'd only go up to 2.5 speed, not 5 speed. But at 2 to 2.5 speed, I edit our podcast at that speed actually, and that way I can still hear where I need to cut things out, where I started coughing, or you fell off your chair or something. But I don't have to listen to it. That way I can get 20-minute podcast edited in about 8 to 10 minutes, and it's doable. And the funny thing I found is if you're listening to that, your brain adapts and you can start hearing it, but then somebody else comes in and says, "Wow, I can't understand what they're saying." So I think it's good to have, and but I find it's also if you listen too fast, it becomes a very stressful thing for me. And so maybe with what you gain from extra time, you lose some from the additional stress level you have from it.
Yep. Right on that. Right on.
All right. So if you're listening to us at normal speed or listening to us at chipmunk speed, we appreciate you listening, and be sure to stay productive. This has been ProdCast, the personal productivity podcast from CRM Audio with Matthew C. Anderson and Joel Lindstrom. You can follow Matthew at his blog, connectingthedata.com, or on Twitter at MC Anderson. You can follow Joel Lindstrom on Twitter at Joel Lindstrom. You can subscribe to the CRM Audio network of podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, or any place else that offers fine podcasts. This podcast is a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC.